Welcome and good morning everyone to the Market Communication Hub workshop. I'll be your host today, Gijsbert Steinaert, of TenneT of course, working for the Department of Customers and Markets. My role is product manager for the Market Communication Hub, and I will guide you through the functional part of the hub. I'm joined by Bram, who is on out of picture right now, but Bram he will guide you through the technical part of the workshop and give you a live demo. And I'm also joined, oh, there's Bram. And I'm also joined by Cengiz. And Cengiz is the project lead for the whole project, the nominations project. And he will moderate all questions that are received, and if there are questions, I'll ask him to answer them. Okay? Please be free to pass your questions. We will look for what questions we have received after each part of the presentation. And to go forward, of course, for TenneT safety is very important. So we left the sheet in, even though you're at home or in your office. But please have a look around what your options are to leave if you need to leave. And to the agenda, starting with the welcome. I will first start with a general introduction into the MMC Hub. Then I will ask Bram to give you a technical deep dive. And there's so much information in there that I will give you a short coffee break afterwards. Followed by the process to connect to the MMC Hub. And finalized by a live demo given by Bram. Let's start with the general introduction, but first, Cengiz, have you got any questions already?
I see that the first responses are coming in, so welcome and good morning again for everyone. There's more likely technical questions what I already received, so I suggest that we will get through them when we're at those topics, especially after the deep dive. So I will moderate today also and look also at the time. And keep that in touch, so we get the right questions at the right moments. So Gijsbert, I suggest that we go to the next topic then.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
The general introduction into the Market Communication Hub. What's happening there? We have started a roadmap where we used in the past, or we're still using, the Centraal Postbus System. The Centraal Postbus System is a secure mail system and using the ADIN language, which is quite an old language by now. And we were asked by both market parties and ACM also to make the step forward towards XML. And we did so by setting up a roadmap and on the same time making the shift towards the Market Communication Hub. It is a large program. Multi-year program. We will pick up each information flow as a separate project. And we will gradually make the MMC Hub more the central hub to communicate over and phasing out the Centraal Postbus system. If we take a look at the roadmap, this is the latest version of the roadmap. In green, you see all information flows that already have been translated into XML and via the MMC Hub. And in gray, you see the projects which are still running. And of course, the top one, nominations, is where we are busy with right now. This is the latest version. You see that nominations is running now with a planned availability in Q1 2021. I see that it's written 2020 here. That's an error. It should be 2021. So from Q1 2021, you will be be able to start your testing and setting up the connection to the hub. Followed by measurement messages, which is planned in the NEDU theme release in Q3 2021. So it's followed quite fast by the second part already. And then control and observe power. There are quite some pilots going currently with scope on auxiliary services. And we decided to first wait the outcome of those pilots before we start phasing out the final parts of the auxiliary services processes. And the final one, allocation, reconciliation, settlement. This is really under discussion in NEDU in the allocation 2.0 program. So that's stated here that it's picked up there. What is the position of the MMC-Hub in the whole policy of TenneT regarding the IT solutions that we offer? I think a lot of you noticed that we are trying to structurize all solutions that we offer to the market. And this is what we call the TenneT front door policy. So the front doors that we offer to you as a market party to connect with TenneT. Of course, there's unstructured information exchange, email, telephone, that will stay there. We offer a MyTenneT, a self-service portal, which you can use for self-service. So, for example, passing on who we should connect to for certain topics with contact rules, but also invoices and contract information, but also IT hub information. You can also find it there. And the other one is what I just talked about, the Central Postbus System, which is gradually being phased out towards the MMC-Hub. And TenneT offers some other solutions which are really up to specifics, like the operational messaging. There's also a project running right now to change the old base mail fax system into the operational messaging system. The direct SCADA coupling, which is there, of course that will stay there. And there's also another solution for European communication, which national market parties won't notice, but it's called the Energy Communications Platform. So this is the front door policy. It's evolving. Our strive is to make it a gradual walkthrough, growing towards the future solutions. For example, there's a discussion about AS4, whether it should be used. The GAS, GTS is using AS4 already. And there's discussion also there in the NEDU to start using AS4. Yes, the MMC-Hub will in future also support AS4 solutions. So we will make a gradual run through towards future IT solutions there. Yeah, maybe just one small look at Genghis, because I'm now going into the MMC-Hub itself.
Yes, we got the first process question, so that's a good moment for this. We got a question of Martijn, and he asked, will this session be recorded? I can answer that directly. Yes, this session will be recorded and will stay available for a certain time, or after that certain time there will be could be requested by us. So you can always contact us for if you want to look at afterwards, or spread it inside your company, of course, for this information what's needed for all the people. So hereby, yes, it will be recorded. I give the word back to you.
Okay, thank you. Then we go a small step deeper into the market communication hub. How does it work? Let's build it up a bit. market party A wants to send a message. It has to be an XML message because that's the language that we use. And he sends it to a SOAP-based web service on the MMC-Hub. When the message is received, the MMC-Hub first looks whether the message is readable, a syntactical validation. And if it's readable, it gives when it's received and if it's checked upon readability, then it gives back a SOAP reply. So it's an immediate reply upon your message which is sent, and it can either be a positive message, yes, the message was sent, was received, good, and it is readable, or yes, the message was received, but sorry, it's not readable, so we are not doing anything with it. When the message is readable, it goes to our outbox, where it's made ready for retrieval by the receiving party. Receiving party can be market party B, or can be TenneT, because TenneT is also just a party on the MMC-Hub. And you see the box of the policies. They determine whether the message is actively pushed towards the receiving party, or whether the party is going to pull for the message. So it's your choice as a market party whether you're going to set open your own web service, which we will use to push the messages towards, or that you will pull for messages and regularly ask whether there are messages for you available. When the market party is TenneT, then the message is pushed to TenneT, and then we do a number of things with the message. At first, we archive the message. So we archive everything that is received by TenneT as a market party. Then we check upon the header information in the message, so you could say the envelope of the message, whether it's valid, whether it has a good combination between message type and the content type, which is mentioned on the envelope. We're also checking upon a valid signing, whether the message is signed by a market party that we know, and whether the signing is valid. And then we route it internally towards our back office systems. And the back office systems proceed with a semantical validation. So they open up the envelope, they look at the message, they read the message, and they check whether it's semantically okay. For example, if you would send us a message which would state, I'm going to produce 400 megawatts per hour, and we know that you have an installation of 100 megawatts, then we will not approve it because you just can't produce 400 megawatts per hour with an installation of 100 megawatts. And the result of the validation and or the result of the checks which are made up front will be translated into an acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement can either be yes, this message has been fully accepted, or sorry, this message is rejected, it's a not acknowledged message with the reasons why it was not accepted. Okay, so then we go through to the second step, more into detail. I hope you can read it because it's a bit smaller. This is a recap of what I just mentioned already. First step is market party addresses a web service URL via a secured and encrypted connection. You will see that security is a very important thing on the MMC-Hub. So you will see that this comes back during this seminar quite some time. So the connection is secured and encrypted, and we receive the message over that connection. Then the received message is validated on readability, on syntax, and then a SOAP reply is sent back and it states whether the message was accepted upon readability or rejected. And then you can close the connection and you know that the MMC-Hub is following up the message. The third one, the received message is stored in the outbox, and then as I said, policies determine whether the message is actively pushed towards the receiver or that the message is made ready for a pull by the receiver. When the message is pushed, it's pushed towards a web service URL that you as a market party has to expose to us. Or when it's retrieved, when it's pulled, the receiving market party can pull the message from the outbox. And I will tell later how that actually works. As TenneT does with a received message, also you as a market party should reply with an acknowledgement. So a semantical answer upon, or functional answer upon the received message, whether it's been accepted or rejected with reasons why you have rejected it. The receiver should check the message upon validity of the header and the signing, and then route it to the correct back-office application. The back-office application then performs semantical validations, so upon validity of the content of the message, and then returns the acknowledgement. And then the final picture you see, it's all steps that I just discussed. Cengiz, are there questions upon these two sheets?
You're wide away. Yeah, one of the questions that came in is why does TenneT choose for SOAP-based web services instead of RESTful APIs? Yeah,
good question. We have made this choice, I think 2 years ago already, and especially at that time, RESTful APIs were not that mature yet. If you read the theory about using RESTful APIs or SOAP, then at that time, especially, it was stated that SOAP was more stable and used for the really formal communication that we are using. There can be a possibility that we will start using RESTful APIs in the future, but as I stated, we want to create a stable development line. And since all market parties, or a lot of market parties, are now investing in SOAP-based, we're not going too fast into using APIs, RESTful APIs. So it will be a stable way forward. And if we will start, and when we will start using REST as a solution, then we of course will state it to you. And make sure that it's not a big bang in which we offer it to you, but a gradual way forward.
Thank you, Gijsbert.
Okay, then I'll go into the next detail part. So security. As stated, security is one of the very important things for TenneT. And we are using 2 levels of security on the, or 2 main levels, you could say, of security on the MMC-Hub. The first one is transport security, and the second one is message security. The transport security is done with an SSL certificate. You as a market party has to provide an SSL certificate, or the carrier has to provide an SSL certificate. And then you could say, okay, but who is the carrier? It can be that you as a market party are serviced by an IT organization which will help you to set up the transport towards the web service. And then in that case we want to know that this IT organization is building up the transport, because we then get a formal relation with that party. So then the carrier has to let himself know, has to knock on our door and say, hello, I'm going to be a carrier for these and these market parties. And then the carrier has to build up the transport, and the carrier has to send us a SSL certificate to be able to build up the secure transport. And as stated, the transport is also encrypted, so no other parties, no third parties can read the message that we exchange via this transport connection. Which is quite important, we are using a two-sided transport security, a TLS 1.2, and you can compare this with a hotel door with two doors towards the other hotel room, in which you can only go through if both parties open their door. Only then you have an open transport connection. That's the easiest comparison to such a transport security. The second level is message security, and there we use the signing certificates, also with certificates. And here the market party has to deliver a certificate which proves that the message was actually set up by the market party itself. So the market party is responsible for the content of the message. And it's proven by the signing certificate which is set up there. And it's not altered in between, because the signing gives a hex upon the content of the message. So it's translated into a number of a number. It's a logarithmic thing that creates a number out of the message. And if the number is the same, then you know that the message has not been bothered with in between. And then we are sure that the message actually comes from, the content of the message actually comes from the market party itself. And the signing is not being bothered with by the MMC-Hub. So the MMC-Hub only just passes the message without looking at the signing. Yeah, if you want to know more about this, it's all described in the TenneT Web Services Guide. And all documents are available on my TenneT. You have a question, Cengiz?
I received a question from Remco. Thank you very much, Remco, for your question. The question is, does the MMC-Hub adjust or alter messages initiated by the sender on the road towards the receiver? So it's a combination between technical and security, I think.
Yeah, a very important question. No, the MMC-Hub does not do anything with the content of the message. And I could actually say the MMC-Hub doesn't even look into the message. With one small thing, because it does do a syntactical check, but that's only looking whether a field contains numbers when its numbers are expected. So it doesn't look what number is stated there. So the MMC-Hub does not alter anything on the content of the message. The only thing that's changed is in the header, because when you send a message, it contains a technical ID. And when you receive the message, you will see that it, I'm doubting, because when it's sent through, it doesn't have a new technical ID, I think, Bram?
No, it doesn't change. No. Market to market, no.
So even the technical ID is not altered there. Yeah.
Correct.
So, but the header, we kept the header open from signing. So market parties, so parties in the chain that are working with this are able to adjust, for example, the technical ID, which you should if you when you're passing through a message. So, but the content of the message is not being bothered with. Does that answer the question that's open there?
That's answered perfectly. Thank you very much, Gijsbert.
Okay, thank you. I already talked a bit about the header. If we look at the header, the MMC-Hub header, there are two main parts in the header. One is the addressing part, and the other one is the security part. The security part is the signing. So the signing tells what the it has is going about the body of the message, and whether the body of the message has been tampered with. So the MMC does not do nothing with the signing here. The other part is the addressing, and there you see that there are 6 fields which are either required or asked to fill, and I will go through them. The first one is the technical message ID. All messages should contain technical identification to be able to distinguish this message from any other message. And the identification should be in universal, unique ID, UUID format. And the technical message ID is changed when it's passed through by a party to a second party. Second one is the correlation ID. This correlation ID is also a UUID, and it states the correlation to the original message. So the correlation ID is not changed and stays the same when you send in a message and it's passed through different parties, and even is the same when you receive it when you receive an acknowledgement on the message. Then you will see that it has the same correlation ID. When you decide to not fill the correlation ID, the MMC will take over the message ID as the correlation ID. Then we have the sender ID, and that's the EN code of the sender of the message and the owner of the content of the message, and therewith the signer of the message. So it identifies the market party which draws up the message stating, okay, this is the nomination for tomorrow, for example, and here's my signature that it's the nomination. The receiver ID is the EN code of the receiving party. So, for example, when TenneT is the receiver, then it should contain the EN code of TenneT as the receiving party. Or when you want to send the message to a DSO, it should contain the EN code of the DSO. I already talked about the carrier. When you are, as a market party, are serviced by an IT party which helps you to deliver the messages, so when it builds up the technical connection to the MMC-Hub, then we want to know the carrier because we have a relation to the carrier. We're actually communicating with that carrier. So the carrier ID contains the EN code of the deliverer, the courier of the message. When the market party delivers its own message, then it contains the EN code of the market party itself. And the final one, the content type, this contains, there is a pre-described list which describes the content of the message. And we use it for routing purposes. We as TenneT use it for routing purposes, but you as a market party can also use it for routing purposes. And I can give an example for the generation load messages, because there we have 2 different content types. The one is a generation load forecast, and the other is the, what was the other one? Installed capacity, yes, I think that was the one. So then we know what the content of the message is without describing what the actual content is, but it's on process level describing what the content of the message is. So that's the MMC-Hub header. Second part is retrieving messages from the MMC-Hub. As stated, you can use 2 different ways to do so. Either you can choose for a push, so then the MMC-Hub pushes the message towards you, or you can choose for a pull. And you can choose for a pull, for example, for security reasons that you don't want to expose a web service externally, or for process reasons that you want to be in control over the process. It's your choice. When you choose for a push, well, okay, then you have to expose your own web service towards the MMC-Hub. And you have to follow the WSDL that TenneT exposes, that TenneT prescribes, because you can imagine that the MMC-Hub cannot deal with 1,000 different WSDLs from all market parties. So we prescribe the WSDL that you have to follow there. You can choose to differentiate per content type, so you can choose to use a different URL, different web service for each content type. And there is a retry function when your web service is not available, then the MMC-Hub will retry to send the message until a positive SOAP reply is received. I will get back into detail on that later. For the pull function, you can choose to pull for messages. And how does that work? How do you know that a message is available for you and what message to pull? You should start with a list request. When you do a list request, the result is a SOAP reply which contains the list of all messages that are available on the MMC-Hub. And then you can follow with a GET. From the list you can retrieve a technical message ID as identifier to state, I want to retrieve that particular message. And the GET message will give you the message back in the same SOAP reply. I stated before that MMC-Hub does nothing with signing, but that's not completely true, because we do validate the list and the GET upon signing to validate whether the market party is actually retrieving their messages. To make sure that no third party is trying to retrieve a message which is not intended for that third party. So we receive a list or a GET which is signed, and the MMC-Hub will validate whether that signing belongs to that market party which is identified as the receiver of that message. And when it's not a valid signing, then it's replied in the SOAP reply, I'm sorry, we will not deliver you any message because it's not a valid signing. Messages will stay available in the outbox during their retention time. So they will stay available for a new retrieval on a later moment. If you ask for a new list, then a message which was already retrieved will not be on the list anymore. So that's about push and pull. And don't worry, we'll go into details later. Using a carrier. I already talked quite a bit about using a carrier. And as I said, you as a party can choose to ask an IT party, a carrier, to facilitate your message exchange. And in that case, the carrier builds up the secure transport using their own transport certificates. So it's their transport, their connection to the MMC-Hub, which is used to send your market party messages. You as a market party are always accountable for your own message, and you have to sign your message with your own signing certificate. So when we receive a message via the carrier from you as a market party, and there's something wrong with the message, we will contact you and not the carrier. Carriers have to request access to the MMC-Hub, making sure that only trusted parties get access to the MMC-Hub. I already also talked about validations and responses, and this table gives you a short overview of all responses that parties expect from the MMC-Hub or from the receiving party. For example, TenneT as receiving party. The MMC-Hub only replies with SOAP replies. So when you build up a connection, it should give back a SOAP reply in the same connection. If you don't receive a SOAP reply, then apparently something went wrong in trying to build up the connection. If you should receive a SOAP reply, either a positive one, yes, this message is readable, is received and it's readable, or a negative SOAP reply, yes, we did see a message come in, but you can't read it, so it's rejected upon SOAP. When the message is syntactically okay, then it's put through to the receiving party, and the receiving party always replies with an acknowledgement towards the original sender of the message. So the acknowledgement is just put through the MMC-Hub just like any other XML message. And it can be 3 different kinds of acknowledgements. As an acknowledgement upon header validation. I'm sorry, I don't understand the content type with this type of message. It's not a valid content type, for example. Or upon signing, I'm sorry, this signing is not valid. We don't recognize this certificate with you as a market party. Or upon semantical validation, and in that case, we should expect to have a full list of all checks upon semantical validations when it's not okay. Or, good news, your message has been fully accepted. That is the part that I want to give you as a general introduction into the MMC-Hub. As you can see, already quite far into detail, but that's what market parties asked for, to get a real deep dive. Cengiz, have you received any questions?
Yes, it's quite busy on the chat, so I want to thank you all. We are receiving a lot of questions. I want to pick out 2 questions, if it's okay for you all, that can be answered right now, and the other questions we will reply on, of course, afterwards. There's a lot of interaction, so I'm very happy with that. The first question came from Rauven. Question about the carrier. Is it the counterpart uses a software vendor through which the CP sends the message to the MMC? Is the software vendor then the carrier? So I think the question of Rauven is, if the software vendor of them, are sending the messages, is that the carrier at that moment?
Yeah, it depends on your contractual relation with the software vendor. If you actually give your message to the vendor and it takes full responsibility upon delivering towards TenneT, I would expect that the software vendor would be the carrier. If you take another example, if you have all your installations on-premise and you just have a consultant coming over your floor which helps you to configure your solution, then I expect that you as a market party are the carrier. So it's your choice, it's upon your contractual relation which determines whether it's an actual carrier situation, or it's just a situation in which you are consulted and we don't have any formal relation with your software vendor. Okay?
Thank you very much. The second question came from Henrik. Thank you very much, Henrik, for your question. The question is, topic is certificates. Does TenneT allow certificates provided by certain parties, usually enterprise level, or does TenneT allow generally used providers like Let's Encrypt?
It's a bit of a difficult question. I don't really understand it, but to give a general answer, the web service guide contains quite a long list of the requirements upon certificates. And one of the requirements is that you should buy them from an approved certificate authority. And approved is that, for example, it should be approved by your government. And in the Netherlands, I think there are currently 3 certificate authorities which are approved by the government, which are able to deliver governmental certificates also. So please refer to the web service guide for details, and Bram will also go into that detail later on in the presentation.
Thank you very much, Gijsbert.
Okay, good. Then I hope you still have energy. We are on time. Bram, can you take us into a deep dive?
Yeah, I will take you into the more deep view of how to connect to the MMC-Hub. So extra information and some lessons learned up till now.
Sure.
So I want to start off with the prerequisites you need to get connected. First off, all the information you need can be found on my TenneT. There's a whole package containing the web services guides, technical guides, implementation guides, WSDL, and the questionnaire. And once you're ready to start connecting, you have to follow these steps. So first of all, we need a questionnaire. The questionnaire must be filled out and supplies us with all the information we need to set up your account. So we get contact information, if you choose to connect via push or a pull, that kind of information. And next to this, you will need certificates, like earlier discussed. And we need separate certificates for our test environment and for our production environment. So in total, we will expect you to send 4 certificates to us, both for the secure connection, the SSL certificate, and for the signing, so-called the SMIME. Of course, you need the WSDLs. They contain information to set up your web service. And should you opt to use the push, we require you to give us your web service endpoints so we can configure them. And once we have all that information and installed it into the MMC-Hub, you can start connecting. So first I would like to dive into the certificates. It's been discussed a lot. Security is very important for us. And we expect you to... Better? Okay. Sorry, my microphone was a bit off. I'm open better now. The certificates can be bought from every CA of your own choosing, as long as they meet the requirements stated in the web services guide. We talked about it a bit earlier. There's a long, extensive list of all requirements. There are a lot of market parties that are now connected to multiple web services, and it is possible to reuse those. You can choose to reuse your transport certificate, reuse your signing certificate. It's up to you. Of course, it has some advantages to reuse. It lowers the costs, it speeds up the process. Of course, there are also disadvantages. For example, should a certificate be revoked or a CA be revoked or any other issue, it may hit multiple web services and increase the impact. So you can make a decision on that on your own. We expect you to send the public keys to us, so we can install them in the MMC-Hub, and they have to be delivered to us to a secure connection, a secure file transfer called transit. A link can be provided from TenneT once you have your certificates. So just request them, and we'll send you them as soon as possible. And once we have those, we will make sure that our IT security will validate the certificates. This can be a long process. Put-through time can be up to 2 weeks. Can be faster, but make sure you save time for that and get your certificates as soon as possible. What we see a lot of market parties do is first request test certificates, have them validated, start testing, and at that point you are sure that the test certificates are valid. You can order the production ones and deliver them to us in a later time. I've also listed some basic certificate requirements, which are requirements for both transport as well as signing certificates. And we expect you to send the certificates in the PCKS number 7 format with the extension P7B. This is a format we can process and normally contains the full chain. So both the root and the intermediate certificates, which you should provide, because the MMC-Hub does not hold all CA certificates. So we expect you to send them to us. Another question we often get is if it's acceptable if the certificate is domain validated or extended validation, and this is not. At this point, we only accept certificates which are organization validated. So you have to make sure that your organization, as a market party, you have this clearance with the CA in time. And we expect the certificates to relate to you as a market party in a common name. This can be a US market party. You can choose to also mention the web services you use it for. That is up to you. But for us, it's important that we can relate your certificates. Then I would like to dive more into the detailed requirements of both transport and signing. Yeah. First of all, transport. Like stated earlier, we use a two-way secure connection over TLS 1.2. So you will have to implement our transport certificate as well. These are also available on my TenneT in a P7B format and can be used on your end. The TLS certificate has a maximum validity of 2 years. So make sure if you reuse your certificates to check the validity and if it's acceptable for you, if it only has a short validity left. Next up, we had a lot of questions about the key usage. So make sure you meet these requirements. These should be general requirements, but all CAs recognize. So make sure you offer these to your CA to get the right certificates, as well with the extended key usage. When we look at the signing certificates or SMIME are connected to a email address, and it's very important that this is not a personal mail address of an employee or someone responsible. It must be a functional mailbox. It can be departmental for a mailbox or a service, but it should not be personal. Signing certificates have a longer validity of 3 years and have a bit simpler key usage and extended key usage. As you can see, the key usage overlaps with that of transport. So in theory you could also use SSL certificates. However, it is not recommended for reusing for multiple web services or the chance of revoke of the certificate. So we encourage you to use a specific signing and a specific transport certificate. And once again, I would like to point out that all the requirements are mentioned in the web services guide. So make sure you check this before ordering your certificates. Then I would like to dive into connecting, what you need for connecting to the MMC-Hub. Of course, the WSDLs will be are available on my TenneT. They contain XSDs and all the information you need to correctly set up your web service. And you can check the technical guide for which WSDLs you need. It depends on the web service you use. It depends you try to connect to. It depends on if you use push or pull. So there is it's all covered in the technical guide. And as you can see in the table below, some messages like delivering only have a specific WSDL, but should you use pull, then it could be possible you need a generic or even a specific. So make sure you check the technical guide and get all the correct WSDLs. We offer an is alive service. So in the WSDL, it's defined. Easy tool to check if we are up, if we can connect with us, and it's it can be used during testing and setting up your connection to quickly see if your transport certificate is in order, if you use the right endpoints. So it's a good place to start when you want to connect to the MMC-Hub or setting up your web service. A question we often get is whether the web service were defined in the WSDL. This was the case at our earliest web service. However, we chose to delete this from the new WSDLs because we have multiple environments, test and production, and it gave more questions and answers. So you cannot find the definition of the web services in detail in the WSDL. Then I would like to talk about delivering a message. Maybe are there questions?
Maybe it's a good time to have a question. I also received one for you, Bram. The first one, you already mentioned it, but I would like to stand still at a certain point. We got a message from Tofik. Thank you very much, Tofik, for your question. Is the certificate already used for GLDPM? Can be reused also for the other streams?
Yes, yeah, that is possible. You can reuse certificates, both transport as well as signing for multiple web services. That's no problem.
Thank you very much. The second question, that's a little bit more difficult one, and I'm trying to recapitulate that question. This came from Thomas. Thomas said the so list command is like removing new messages available, and the second list won't show present messages that are still there because of the retention time. Does Thomas needs to keep the list of available messages in his application to request them by a get command from his side?
Yeah, we'll go into that a bit later, but yes, it is correct. The list response only shows messages which have not yet been retrieved from the MMC-Hub or have not been pushed, and don't have a delivered date as we use it. So yes, should you want to be able to retrieve those messages on a later date, you will have to keep those values, or at least the technical message ID of those messages in your application, correct?
Thank you very much, Bram.
Okay, no more? Then I would like to go into delivering a message. First of all, the first connection you make is the SOAP connection to the MMC-Hub. And like told earlier, once you send a message, you will get an automated SOAP reply. What the MMC-Hub will do a syntactical validation, and it's a synchronous process. So should there be anything wrong with the message on a syntax level, you will get an immediate response, SOAP reply, stating the error. You can see an example here, the above message. There are multiple XSD validations that fail, and you get an instant reply stating what is wrong with the message and what should be altered in order to pass. Like I said, of course, if you don't get a SOAP reply, you will not reach the MMC-Hub. Often this will be an issue with the transport certificate, or at least the secure connection. And it's good to note, if you have a positive reply, you will receive the the lowest message stating with a correlation ID in it. Only if you've received this message, you are certain that your message is inside the MMC-Hub and will be processed. If you receive an HTTP 200, but you don't get a message with a correlation ID, you still have not reached the MMC-Hub. So it's important to note that you received this. And it's also good to, I would recommend using the correlation ID, since the correlation ID is the identification we as TenneT use to follow your message, check on your messages. So if you have any questions about your message, or has it passed, or what happened with it, we will need the correlation ID to find it. If we have to look up at date, time, or variables like that, it is a pretty extensive analysis. So please make sure you register the correlation ID in order to keep communication as smoothly as possible. Another tip I would like to mention is to use the correct SOAP action. I will show it in the demo as well, but the SOAP action should be inserted into the HTTP header, and it's something we've seen in the past that it's an issue that happened a lot. So it's a tip I would like to give. So that's on the SOAP reply. So then I would like to go into receiving a message from the MMC-Hub. Like stated earlier, we have two mechanisms, both push and pull. First of all, the push. Of course, the advantage of using push is you get your messages instantly delivered to your web service. Only within seconds you have your reply, so you know you are always up to date and in time for processing messages. We can configure your endpoint on a combination of message type and content type. So we can really finely granulate your messages, use multiple endpoints, whatever works for your process is possible. You can use one endpoint and route it yourself on content type, or you can use multiple endpoints and we organize the routing for you. And of course, over this connection also uses the TLS secure connection, the two-way. So make sure on your endpoint you have our certificate installed as well, so we can set up the two-way secure connection. Of course, the tip, once again, check the technical guide for all information you need. Information about the whistles, which endpoints we have open to you for this specific web service. Information about our endpoint or our IP, so you can whitelist if needed. And we have a proposal for how to name your endpoint in order to keep a good overview. Next to this, if should push fail on whatever reason, we have a retry mechanism. It runs for about 6 hours. So the first 10 retries are every 4 or 5 minutes. After that, every 30 minutes, we retry to send you the message. Once we have the correct SOAP reply from your end, only then will the retry mechanism stop, and are we certain that you've received the message. To get into the pull mechanism allows you to be in control yourself of when you receive messages, how often you receive messages. So it's also a pretty good option. Messages, should you choose to pull, we have that configured in the MMC-Hub in the policies part. And what the MMC-Hub will do, they will only place your messages in the outbox and watch for your retrieval. Like stated before, you use the same route as sending a message. So you send us a list message, you send us a get message, and we check once again the secure connection. So we once again set up the two-way secure, as well as check your signing to authenticate that you are the party entitled to the information in the acknowledgement or in the message that is in the MMC-Hub for you. To be sure that this is the only point where signing is used in the synchronous process. So should there be a signing error, you will receive this in a SOAP reply instead of an asynchronous acknowledgement or negative acknowledgement. I will show this in a demo so you can see how this works. Well, the process of retrieving a message through pull is a two-step process. First of all, you send us a list message. The list request states, has as the body mentioned your EAN code, and simply requests, show me the messages for this EAN. And as a response, you will get a list of all messages available for retrieval in the MMC-Hub. As I said before, only messages that have not yet been pulled or pushed can be found in this list. It is possible to add a variable, the correlation ID, in the message body, making sure you only see the messages with the same correlation ID, so the messages that are interconnected in your response. For example, if you send in I believe a schedule message and you want the acknowledgement of that message, you can add the correlation ID and you will only see all messages which are linked to the initial message you sent. Next step in that process will be to do a get. A get request results in a SOAP response with the message that is awaiting for you in the hub as the message body. And to do the get, you will not use the correlation ID, but you will use the technical message ID of the message you want to retrieve. I will show you in a bit. I have some screenshots and I will show it in the demo. One thing I want to point out, we have a known error on this, being that the technical message ID that is shown in the list, that's the one you need to get the message. However, the technical message ID mentioned in the message you retrieve will be different. But the correlation ID, of course, matches, so in that way you can validate that is the correct response. But it is an issue to keep in mind when you're pooling messages. So next up, I have an example. of the pull process. I hope it can be read. It's a lot of screenshots. So first off, this is the list response. As you can see, we have the message addressing, stating the technical message ID, the correlation ID, the sender and receiver information, as well as the content type, and the security as well. And in the body, you can see multiple elements of the message list, message metadata. And the message metadata contains the information, the header information of the metadata of the messages in the hub ready for you. So encircled, I have one message, as you can see, with its technical message ID and the correlation ID. And you use this technical message ID to retrieve your message. So if I set up a GET response, of course, same header information, same addressing, and in the body, I mentioned the technical message ID that I found in the list response. If I send this message, I get an instant asynchronous SOAP reply, again with a header. However, if you can see, the technical message ID in the actual response differs. However, the correlation ID matches, so I do know this is the message I tried to receive from the MMC Hub. So, are there perhaps any questions at this point?
Yes, it's the right moment. We received a new question of Rowan. Do we need to use the list, or can we always pull everything without using the list?
You will have to perform the list to receive the technical message IDs of the message you want to retrieve. Like stated earlier, the technical message ID changes during the process, during the flow in the MMC Hub and our backend. So the technical message ID of for example, the acknowledgement on your message differs from the technical message ID of the message you send. So yes, you will always have to perform the list to get the technical message IDs. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bram. I got a second question from Bram, so he has the same name. Can the MMC hubs support routing based on content type to different systems of one organization?
Yes, that is possible. We can route on content type to whichever endpoint you give us. And if there are different organizations or different departments, that's no problem. Yep.
Thank you very much, Bram.
Sure. Okay, so next step will be to check the message validation. It's important to note that validation of the messages, of the header of the messages, is only done for messages sent for which TenneT is the receiver. So market-to-market communication, we do not check the content of messages. Once we receive a message and it is TenneT is the receiver, it will be routed to our application, and we will do, first of all, an item potency check. We will make sure that this message was not sent to us earlier to avoid clutter and overflow of our applications. And we do a check on the content type. We check if the content type is allowed for this specific message type. At this point, it's only a warning, but in time we will refuse messages if the content type does not match the message type. There is also later on, we will also do a check if you as a market party are qualified to send in this specific content type. The list of content types can of course be found in the technical message ID for each specific web service. So you will know which to use. Should the message pass the header check, then we check the signing. For this we use the public key of the signing certificate you sent to us, and we validate it with the EAN code of the sender ID, so the market responsible party, to make sure it is the party is authorized to send the message and to validate that the message is not altered on the way over to TenneT. And once again, should you use a carrier, the signing should be done by the party responsible for the content of the message, being the sender ID. We do encourage, should there be a market-to-market communication, we encourage market parties to implement the same or similar validations on those messages, to make sure specifically or mainly for authorization reasons, so that you as well know that you are talking with an authorized market party and have unaltered data. I have listed some best practices, specifically mainly at signing. We see in previous web services that setting up signing can be some big hurdle to take. So I have some experiences and tips. First off, you make sure that your security elements of the message are all in one line. Especially the signing information, but this will make sure that our application can read the security and the signing of your message correctly and will not fail. And next to this, use the subject key identifier to identify which certificate you use. That's the SKI is the identification method we use on our end. We've implemented the Java library WSS4J. And next to it, the signing should only be on the message body. Only on the content of the message, not the full message or only the header. Because the header information, the message addressing should be readable for the MMC-Hub in order to have a proper routing and perform these checks. To make it easier, we have some example messages, both messages, acknowledgement, responses, all with correct signing on them. So you can use that as a guideline to implement your own signing. And perhaps a good way to start setting up signing is first testing the connection and the signing through an application like SOAP UI or other easy SOAP web service applications. This will help identify any issues in the signing quickly, and it's low key, so it can help setting up signing faster. Next to this, we have some information stated, of course, in the web service guide for more overall information, and we have some specific websites also mentioned in the web services guide for more detailed information on how to set up your web service connection. Any questions? No? Okay. Then I will dive into the responses. There are two kind of responses you receive when sending messages to the MMC-Hub. First of all, the first off is the technical response. It's a synchronous communication based on the SOAP reply. We have, of course, two responses are possible. An OK, and you get the aforementioned correlation ID. And should you have an error, we send you a message with the false string in it. Make sure you can read the false string, you extract it from the message, because it will give you detailed information on whichever error occurred during your sending the message. And as said before, should you get an error, the message has not reached the MMC-Hub, so we can't see it. It's not available for us. Only if you have the SOAP response with the correlation ID will you be certain that the message is received by us. The second part of the communication will go are the functional responses, which is an asynchronous communication, meaning that we use the acknowledgement or negative acknowledgement or other message type to send to you through the MMC-Hub for you to pull or get pushed. If the message is okay, our application will send you a message fully accepted. Should there be errors, these are mentioned inside the message in the body with corresponding error codes. And we have two categories of errors. First off, should there be anything wrong with the message header, then you will receive error codes with a 10500. Should there be anything wrong with the actual body of the message, the error codes will start with a 10100. And we do have an overview of all our error codes available on my TenneT. The Semantical code list can be downloaded with a more detailed specification of each error.
So this concludes the technical deep dive. I hope this came up to your expectations upon the details of where we went into. As stated before, this seminar is being recorded, so you can just look for them later on. And we will also publish the sheets, so you can, for example, use the links that Bram just showed you. We now give you some time to relax and to process all the information that you received. We are going to start again at 11. So thank you for your interest, and we will see you back at 11. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good coffee break, that you have some nice coffee either in front of you or you just finished it. Let's go on with the second part of the MMC-Hub workshop. I will first give you a short overview of the process, how to start up your process to connect to the MMC-Hub. Then we have some room for answering questions. And then I will ask Bram to give you a live demo. So let's start with the second part. The MMC-Hub connection process. First, to get started, you go to my TenneT to find all relevant documentation. If you do not have my TenneT account yet, you can consult your moderator if you know who it is, because all market parties have a moderator which is able to create my TenneT accounts. And if you don't know who your moderator is, you can consult the TenneT Customer Care Center, and they will tell you who the moderator is. And why are we doing it that way? Is because we do not know who from your company should have access to what information of your company, because it's your information. For example, invoices. Well, I don't know whether you should have access to invoices information. For this, you should get access to the IT connectivity app on my TenneT. So, if you go to my TenneT, you'll see the home page. If you can switch back to the presentation, you'll see the home page. Thank you. And the arrow points out which app you should click. And if you click the app, you come in this, you see this screen, and then you should click on other documents, on MMC-Hub, sorry. You should click on MMC-Hub, because we're talking about the MMC-Hub, and then you should click on documents. And if you click on documents, you'll see this screen. And here you'll find all documents which are relevant for the MMC-Hub. So, for example, the web service guide we've been talking about, but also the semantical validations document, the implementation guide on a more functional level, and the technical guide on a more technical level. There are different filter and search options on top of the screen. Well, you can find out if you use it. So. It should be quite user-friendly to do so. The document structure, each web service has its own set of documents. So there's one general TenneT web service guide, and there are some other supporting general documents like the semantical fault code list, which Bram talked about earlier. And per web service, we have a set of documents. At first, the implementation guide, which tells you what the XML message should look like, how it should be built up, what content is accepted in that message. And the semantical validations document, describing the validations which are executed upon such a message. Or when you receive functional messages, what validations you are expected to expose on a received message. And in blue, the technical documents, so the technical guide describing the URL of your the web service you are going to use, the WSDLs that you need to follow, and the XSDs which tell you what syntactical checks are processed on the message. If you want to get started, you have to start with filling out a questionnaire. This questionnaire is available on my TenneT, and you can fill out which web services you wish to connect to. You can also start with filling out it for the web service you are connecting to right now, and fill out a new questionnaire when you want to connect to another web service later. That's okay. Please read and fill the complete document before you sign, because we sometimes receive documents which are not fully filled, and that, yeah, we cannot process it. We have to get back to you to ask you what it should be. And you should also have to fill out the document when you're using a carrier. New carriers that we don't know yet have to fill out the document once in order to become a trusted party. So then we know who you are as a carrier and who to contact, for example, things like that. You also have to deliver us certificates for security. We've been talking about security already. As said, this will come back several times because it's a very important topic for us. You have to deliver your certificates to us. The carrier delivers the transport certificates. The sender delivers the signing certificates, the message certificates. And the certificates have to comply to the rules set in the web service guide. TenneT will validate, it's a difficult word in English, validate these certificates before we shall install them. So yeah, you will get a feedback whether the certificate is accepted or not. Please take into account that this can give a throughput time of 2 weeks. When you got the message from TenneT that your connection is installed, configured, then you can start your test and your testing phase. And we do so with a test and qualification facility. Market parties are obliged to qualify before they are allowed to participate in the message exchange, which is described in our netcode, in the Dutch netcode. And TenneT is setting up a test and qualification facility to help you, to guide you through this process. At first, the testing phase. It starts with the connectivity testing, which is really focused upon setting up your connection to the MMC-Hub. The first time will be the most complex, and if you're addressing more web services, then it's more of the same. So then if it's okay, then you should just be able to add more. So that's the connectivity. And you can see the results of your tests on my TenneT. So if you send in a message to the TQF, you can go to my TenneT and go to the TQF app and see what's happened with the message. Second step is functional testing, in which is specific for each market document. So, for example, nominations, scheduling is different functional testing than for generation load, for example. Also here, the results will be available on my TenneT. So if you start your testing on the test and qualification facility, you can use the access via my TenneT to see what's happening with your message. When you have succeeded your testing, when you think you are fully able to participate in the messaging process, then you can go for qualification, and the TQF will, in the future, also support the qualification phase, and so you can execute qualification scenarios. For example, when you need to take into account the overgo from a summer to winter time or winter to summertime, that's always a difficult thing, because then you have to take into account that it has extra time levels in the message, or less time levels in the message, and a lot of market parties find that difficult, so that's often part of the qualification procedure. If we take a look on the screens, they are only in concept right now, because this is currently under development within TenneT. If you go to my TenneT and you open the TQF app, then you will see something like this. And so you'll see a full list of all messages that we have received and the different steps that it went through within TenneT, and whether it has passed that step or has failed that step. And in the example you see here, you see that a message was received on the 21st of September. It was validated upon syntax and passed the syntax validation. Then it was checked upon header, passed, checked upon signing, passed, and then checked upon semantical rules, and there it failed because something in the content of the message was not acceptable. Also here you can filter, you can search, and you can ask for detailed information on the button on the right side, and you can download the message. So this will help you to go through the test phase, and parties that have already connected to the MMC-Hub will notice that this is new, because up till now, for example, Bram, but also Jacqueline has helped you through this manually. But this will make sure that you are really up to self-service. We expect to deliver the first connectivity part of the testing in a month or maybe two, but we are finalizing it now. The qualification phase, when testing was successful, you can start your qualification phase. And the qualification requires you as a party to successfully follow up a number of functional steps. If I take an auxiliary services example, it can be that you first apply for a bid, or maybe even first a contract, then a bid. Then TenneT can allocate the bid, call for allocation, and you have to respond to that also. So the qualification can be a sequence of processes which you have to follow. But it can also be that it's just only sending in a message and giving a correct acknowledgement to the message. That can also be a qualification. So it differs per message that you process that you follow. And parties are only allowed onto production after a successful qualification. It's the same with the CPS, which has been going on for years. You have to qualify before you can take part in the process. And when you have connected to the MMC-Hub, when you have qualified, when you went live on production, then a short switch to the aftercare, which is important to take into account. Each time you use the process in production, in practice, the qualification is renewed, because then you have proven that you can follow that process. And as the netcode states, qualifications become invalid after 1 year, and we have implemented that the qualification will become invalid after 1 calendar year in which you didn't use this type of message. Up till now that's okay, because all messages in the MMC-Hub is into daily processes or monthly processes. And in the future we have to take into account how to deal with yearly processes, because it's not really a thing that the netcode takes into account. But for now, this is the way that it works. The second part of the aftercare note, which I wanted to bring to you, is the validity of the certificates. So transport certificates are valid for only 2 years, and signing certificates for 3 years. So it's a bit more strict noted on this sheet, but in practice it's a bit longer. But you, as certificate owner, are responsible for a timely renewal. So you have to take into account when your certificate is going to become invalid, because from that time on, you will not be able to communicate anymore via the MMC-Hub. So take that into account. TenneT will facilitate the communication to other MMC-Hub users for example, for a signing certificate. I think a lot of you know the certificate renewal process already. Unfortunately, we needed to follow this too often lately. And up till now, that process is running smoothly. So please take that process into account. The final aftercare note I wanted to bring to you is please make sure to keep your contact data up to date via my TenneT. TenneT communicates upon the contact roles which are set via my TenneT. So if we know that Mr. X has the contact role as ICT specialist, then we know that we have to address Mr. X for topics about the MMC-Hub, for example, or certificate renewal. So TenneT will more and more use the contact roles which are used on, which are presented on my TenneT, and please make sure that they are actual, because only when they are actual we will be able to reach you on important topics. This for the process. Cengiz, are there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much, Gijsbert. We have received some questions in the meanwhile. The first one, will there be a specific and detailed timeline for connectivity and functional testing phase, and furthermore the qualification process? I think that the question goes more likely about our experiences of the last year, or 2 years, what the timelines are when a party is going through that process. Do we know how those timelines looks like now?
Yeah, I think Bram knows best. And to give time to switch the camera to Bram. Bram, I know that it depends a lot upon the market party itself. Correct. Because if the market party knows what it's about and has everything under control, then it can go really fast. Because the configuration of your account on the web service, and I see you can take it up now. Yeah. The configuration on the web service is just a few days work, and then the testing is up to you as a market party. Yeah, Bram?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So once you send in your questionnaire, it usually takes a couple of working days to have it processed and installed in the MMC-Hub. Certificates can take a bit longer. As said, it can take up to 2 weeks to have them validated. But once these are validated, most of the time in 2 or 3 working days, we have them installed and you're ready to start testing, so you're all set up. In our experience, it really depends on how much experience a market party has with setting up web services. Some market parties have taken up till 6 months to set it up, to get sign-in correct, to get the TLS connection correct. Other market parties do it within a month. Or a couple of weeks, so it's hard to say how long. Do note that signing can be a bit tricky, and check the notes, check the tips we have given up till now, and make sure that you contact us early on if you encounter any issues. For qualifying, for the more functional testing, I have a bit less experience, but that can take up to 2 months, depending on how many data will be sent and how large your grid is, for example. So it's hard to say. It can be fast. We try to have all questions and issues processed within a couple of working days each time. So that's all we can do.
Cengiz?
Thank you very much. I think that's a clear answer, also how the process works and what the dependencies are in the process. It's good to see that we're trying to help also the parties within this topic. Second question what I've received is if the qualification includes cross-border, will TenneT send XML capacity files or a Kai code to use, like a YAO action house? It's quite, I think, a specific question.
It's a really functional question about the process, and I'm not really introduced into the process. No. So I think we should ask one of the business analysts which are available for that.
Okay, I should say let's place this in the parking place, and we will come back at it.
Yeah.
We will mail this also, as mentioned. The questions will be answered, which we didn't mention today, by mail. So every question will be answered afterwards. I got a remark in the meanwhile also from Robert. At the moment, TLS certificates ordered from Covadis, probably one of the suppliers of those certificates, are only valid for 1 year, not 2 years, he's saying. So there's also one very important to keep in mind when you're working with those certificates, that that you prevent any loss in the meanwhile.
Yeah, which is no problem for us. You can use certificates which have a shorter validity. The only thing is that we both have a bit more work to change because you have to change it a bit earlier then. Yeah.
I got also another question. So it's quite busy on the chat also. Thank you very much for all questions, as mentioned before. The second question what we received is concerning the certificates. Is it possible to use the existing certificates for the CPS environment? What is being used for the CPS environment, also for the MMC Hub?
No, the certificates from CPS cannot be reused since they don't meet the requirements stated in the Web Services Guide. For example, the revoke list does not match the requirements we have on those. So no, the CPS certificates cannot be reused.
Okay, good to know. There are no further questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you. To elaborate a little bit on the CPS, the certificates on the CPS were explicitly ordered for the CPS, and that's why they have some technical limitations upon reuse on the MMC Hub. That's the situation there. If we went through the most important questions which are relevant for all parties, as stated by Cengiz, we will get back to the detailed questions we also received. We received some very high-level technical questions also. We will get back to them. The same goes for more process, functional process, business process questions. We will also get back to them. Then I think it's time to go forward to the live demo. Okay. Bram.
As mentioned before, the TQF, the test and qualifying facility, is still under construction, so I can't use that to show you a demo. What I will do is use the simple application, the SOAP UI, to send message to the hub and show you the pull process. I can't demo the push since I don't have my own endpoint, but I will demo sending a message. I will show you some errors you can encounter and show you how to retrieve the message from the hub. So if we switch to the application, as you can see, I will use the generation load message in this demo. It's one that's it's fully set up in the hub yet. And as you can see here, we have a XML message. It's a functional message, contains all data. You can see the message exists out of the header with the message addressing, as well as the body containing all the data needed by TenneT. First off, I think we'll show you what happens if during the syntax validation. So for example, if I alter this data and I try to send it to TenneT, I get a SOAP response within a fault string with the fault code. As you can see, the 10500, meaning it's an error, a technical error. XSD validation failed, and it gives me which values are incorrect or could not be processed. So this means the message has not reached the MMC Hub. We don't have the message, and you have to alter it in order to deliver it to us. So once I put the data correct, it shall pass. First off, I will send a message that will fail in our backend, or at least during the signing check. So once again, I sent the message. As you can see now, the message passes the syntax validation and is now in the MMC Hub. So I received the correlation ID, and the correlation ID is used to track the message and retrieve all linked messages. Like I said, I will use the pull option. So for that, first step will be a list request. If we look at the list request, well, I use a randomizer to create the technical message ID. You can see I sent the message again to the EIN of TenneT, and in the body I proclaim my own receiver ID. So I want all messages for this EAN, my test EAN, and I would like, in this case, well, maybe first off, show you what happens if I send it without. Yeah, that's correct. So first off, if I don't give a correlation ID, I receive a full message from the MMC-Hub with, again, the header information. Signing is on there right now. And next to this, all messages that are available for me. As you can see, there are various messages available for this EAN on the hub. But I can also request a specific content type correlation ID. So now I have to get the correct correlation ID of the message I want to see. And sorry for this, I altered the wrong message. Damn it. Yes, this is the correct one. Now, if I do my list request, I will receive only all the messages connected with this correlation ID that are available in the MMC-Hub for this EAN code or for this receiver. So once I send it, again, a full message with the header, with the signing, but now only one message is returned for me, which uses the same correlation ID as I requested. Now I use the technical message ID. This technical message ID to retrieve the actual message. For that, I have to send a GET request. So the GET request is a simple request, again, addressing and a small message body, only being able to send the technical message ID I just received in my list request. And once I send this, that's wrong demo. Once I send this, you can see I get my actual message. Like stated, the technical message ID differs from the one I request. I request one with E23. The response has a different one. However, the correlation ID matches, so I do know it's the correct message. And as you can see, this is a message, a negative acknowledgement stating that the signing on the first message I sent, so this generation load marker document, was incorrect. So that's the basis of the pull mechanism. I can show you if I alter the signing that it will reach our back offices. So once again, I sent a generation load marker document. I use the correlation ID to perform the list request. I use this technical message ID to retrieve the actual message. And once I perform the GET request, you see I have a new message, this time with a functional response. Well, I know the message itself, the data is incorrect. So I receive a message fully rejected. I receive a message fully rejected with an explanation of all the errors that are in the message for me to alter. So the message has been processed in our backend, but has failed on data issues. So So maybe it's interesting to show you the security tips. So this is the message I sent to the MMC-Hub. You can see the HTTP header as well as the actual message as it is sent to the MMC-Hub. So it has the security elements are added to it. You can see here it's all on one line, and I have an example here. The SOAP header, it proclaims the SOAP action, like I mentioned before. And you can see the security elements on one line, as well as use of the SKE or the subject key identifier to identify the certificate. So those are that's the way you should set up your signing for your message. Another thing I would like to show you is first off, this was the asynchronous process, the asynchronous responses. So first off, you get through an acknowledgement. I was indicated that first off, signing was incorrect, and secondly, that the data was incorrect. I can also show you what happens if the signing for the list request is incorrect. So I have a list request over here, and once I activate the wrong signing, you can see I get the same error as I received in the acknowledgement, which I pulled, but now it's in a synchronous SOAP reply. So the message, I don't get any list response, I don't get a message back, only the indication that my signing was incorrect. So this indicates that we do check signing to make sure you only receive the messages you are authorized to receive. So this is basically the setup for sending messages to the MMC-Hub and pulling the messages. Like I said, push I cannot demo since we don't have my own endpoint. But of course, that will be you have your own GUI and your own application to how you process those messages. Did you receive any questions about this?
No, I'm checking directly. Not about this part. It's more on process part again.
Okay. So this concludes my live demo. It's a bit shorter than expected, but it's a fast web service. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bram. Yeah, this actually concludes the whole MMC-Hub workshop or seminar. Unless there are some final questions we can take along, Cengiz?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 questions what I've received in the meanwhile, also about the earlier topics. Maybe it's good to go through them and give also afterwards instructions how everyone can look back to the webinar afterwards, so that they have also the right instructions and how they can contact us about this topic. The first question what I've received is from Bram again. What does the MMC do with messages with certain content types that is not relevant for the receiver, but is however by mistake sent to the organization?
Yeah, the MMC-Hub does not do a header check for you as a market party. So that means that when a message is received with a market party that does not exist even, and the encode does not exist, then it will just go to the outbox, and yeah, it will not be pushed because there's no policy to push it, and it will be available for retrieval, but nobody will retrieve it because it's not an existing party. So then the sending party, because the sending party does not receive an acknowledgement, knows something is wrong and something went wrong. Same can go for the content type. If you as a market party receive a message with a content type which you would not expect, then I would expect that you would send a negative acknowledgement that this message was not expected by you. TenneT does the same. In some cases we do not expect expect an acknowledgement, and in that case we will that's a wrong example, because We do not respond to acknowledgements. And so then that's a bit of a hard example. So, we could receive a message which was not intended to send for TenneT based on content type, and then we would send back a not acknowledged receipt answer. And to get back on the responses, if we go back to the sheet with all responses, I can go there. It's good to shift through one moment. Going there in the presentation, and then we can show it. There. It's there now. As stated, a response message does not get a response. So I just made a bit of a mistake taking an acknowledgement as an example. If we would receive an acknowledgement which we would not expect, then TenneT does just not do anything with it, and then it falls dead. Because if you would respond to a response message, then you would get a never-ending story of responses to each other. Okay?
Yes.
Cengiz, other questions?
Yes, I also received another question, a more generic question. How long will the CPS system will be available?
Yeah, good question. In the roadmap, we saw that this, and I'll go back to the roadmap in the presentation because it supports my answer. In the roadmap, we saw that it is picked up on the levels per project. So nominations is one project, measurement messages is one project, etc. And the CPS will be available, the information flow will be available, the availability of the information flow will be discussed within that project. So for example, nominations, we have a task force for nominations, and the task force discusses how long the information flow will be available. And when we went through the whole roadmap, the allocation, reconciliation, settlement as final part, also in that project it's agreed upon how long the CPS will remain open. And finalizing that, yeah, we as TenneT can demolish the whole CPS system. So giving a really broad answer to maybe a small question, but that's how it works. Cengiz.
We are through the questions. So that was the last question what was answerable here.
Okay, well,
Thank
very
you
good.
Much.
Thank you very much for all your questions. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to send them to us. You can use your regular channels, so for example, TenneT Customer Care Center, or if you have a contact with Bram and Jacqueline, the functional management mailbox. To give a short wrap-up, we took you along in the details of the MMC-Hub, the process to get connected and the technical details to get connected. Please refer to all documents on the My TenneT site. We will also publish there the presentation for your feedback. And of course you can find the video recording of this meeting. You can go there via the same login you received to follow this seminar itself. And it will be available for 1 month, I understood?
Yeah, somewhere around 1 month and then offline from our SharePoint.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to send this through or watch, please make sure that you do it within 1 month. And then you can take a closer look upon what we said. Thank you very much for your attention. This concludes the MMC-Hub workshop. And till next time, thank you. Bye-bye.